Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Inverclyde Council Audit Committee. I have an opening statement to make. Welcome to this meeting. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for subsequent broadcasts, available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations, the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with council published policies, available through the council's website. Members of the council remind you that they should follow the council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thank you for that. Before we start, I'd like to welcome David Forbes, our new Chief Financial Officer. Welcome, David, to your first Audit Committee meeting. We move on to any apologies.
No apologies for absence have been intimated. We'll now move to a roll call. Can the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Councillor Cofferty?
In the chamber.
Councillor Crowther?
Present remotely.
Councillor Curley?
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Hellier?
Present remotely.
Councillor Law? Councillor McCormick?
Present remotely.
Councillor Maguire? Councillor McVeigh?
In chamber.
Councillor Nelson?
In chamber.
Councillor Reynolds?
Present remotely.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Agenda item 2, performance management, and we still welcome Andy to our committee meeting. Good to see you, Andy. Agenda item number 2, internal audit progress report, 1st of October 25, 30th of November 25. Andy, thank you.
Great, thanks to yourself, Chair. So this is a regular progress report on internal audit activity since the last audit committee meeting in November. There were 2 reviews finalised. Firstly, the planning applications audit, and secondly, our compliance review of records management. For planning applications, the overall control environment opinion was satisfactory. There were 3 green issues, and actions have been agreed to improve the control environment, which include introducing a formal sign-off process for fee reconciliations, and also officers will review and update the administrative procedural documentation to reflect current practice. For records management, the overall control environment opinion was satisfactory. There was 1 amber issue identified in relation to some services retaining records for longer than the retention period, or some services had not been reviewing and actioning electronic records on a regular basis. An action plan has been agreed to improve the control environment, and regular updates will be provided to Audit Committee on action plan implementation. For internal audit actions, there were no actions due for completion by the 30th of November, and there are 11 current actions being progressed by officers. Thanks, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Colleagues, any questions for Andy on this agenda item? I see a hand up. Councillor Crowther.
Thank you, Chair. On Appendix 1 under 2.3, it states that decisions on whether to grant planning permission must comply with the Council's local development plan and related policies alongside statutory guidance and relevant legislation. Focusing on 2 words, must comply. There are a few instances where applications where, after all due considerations have been taken into account, guidance received from officers runs contrary to this, which indicates that under certain circumstances there is an element of discretion. How can this be taken into account in respect of an audit?
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. Andy? Anne?
Yes, it be.
Andy, could you answer that question, please?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. So in terms of the audit, what we were looking at was a sample of planning applications and looking at the compliance and approval process, and we didn't find any issues with the sample cases that we looked at.
Right, thank you. And are you okay with that, John?
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any questions on the screen. None in the chambers. Move on to agenda item number 3. External audit action plans, current actions. Andy again, please.
Through yourself, Chair. So this again is just the regular report on external audit action plans. There were 2 external audit actions due for completion by the 30th of November. One has been reported as complete, and for one action the completion date has been extended, and that's in relation to out-of-date policies for the council. Officers are here today if there's any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Any question, colleagues, on this report? I see none on screen, none in the chamber. Thank you. Are we happy to agree the actions?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Agenda item number 4 is the corporate risk register, and we have Deborah Clark. Thank you, Deborah.
The purpose of this report is to present the full corporate risk register to Audit Committee for consideration and highlight key developments since the last interim report in September 25. The corporate risk register highlights the most significant corporate risks facing the council, the key actions being taken in response to them, and the residual risk score reflecting current mitigating actions. Review of the corporate risk register was completed by the CMT, and the existing risks were validated as still accurate. The following risks have been updated following review with CMT to reflect changes in the risk profile. The impact rating for risk CNR02 around inappropriately resourced or resilient workforce has been increased, primarily to reflect the cumulative effect of historical budget cuts and employee savings, and the recently reported increasing sickness absence trend. The second point of note is regarding risk CRR09, the effect of a successful large-scale cyber attack. Following the previous audit committee of November, an action from the output of the Glasgow City Council-led audit was to review and update the corporate risk register entry for cyber security. As part of that review, and in light of recent incidents that had affected both the public and private sector, the likelihood rating of this risk was increased. And lastly of note, following the completion of the Council's first digital maturity assessment, this CRR04 digital readiness have been updated to reflect the findings and recommendations from the report output.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Just before we move on, I would like the Chief Executive to say a few words about 3.4, second bullet point, regarding cyber attacks.
Really, we recognise that this is a risk register and it's not reporting on cyber activity. So, given that there is an investigation in respect of the cyber activity against the council, it would be inappropriate for me to answer any questions from members at this stage.
Thank you. Do you understand that, colleagues? That at this stage of the game, it would be inappropriate to be asking questions on cyber attack. Do we have any questions, colleagues? Councillor McVeigh.
Thank you, Chair. On 3.4 as well, regarding inappropriate resource or resilient workforce this year, that's high risk at the moment, but given that the Scottish Government have indicated they're going to reduce the local government headcount by 0.5% over the next 5 years. Do you also have any opinions on that? I can give an indication of what the impact that would be on local government, bearing in mind that we're cut the loan and we're potentially losing staff and cutting job and services in this upcoming budget.
Chief Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor McGee, at this stage, we don't have any analysis as to what, or I don't have any analysis to what the council's element of that reduction in workforce would be. There's conjecture on it, but we've got no firm analysis on that basis. We have to make sure that the services that we provide to the public are then highly fit for purpose. And we'll continue to try and support our workforce who we value intensely. But ultimately we have to recognise that budget cuts happen and make sure that they're fit for purpose.
Are you anticipating any guidance from the Scottish Government within the next few years?
Chief Executive.
Convener, not at all. I mean, there's happened announcements made, as I said in my introductory remarks. I have no knowledge at this stage as to what expectation the Scottish Government have in respect of how much the council's workforce will be reduced. We have to ultimately, the council has to deliver services and we reflect on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlyle.
Yeah, I think just on that point, I think my understanding was that the 0.5% reduction was actually for civil service Scottish Government jobs, not local government jobs. That would be our decision to decide how we want to resource that.
Chief Executive.
So you can be, I'm not aware of that.
Councillor Crowther.
Thank you, Convener. Under the latest corporate risk register, it's the risk code Charlie Romeo Romeo 09, which is the threat to successful large-scale cyber attack. Taking cognizance of the recent activity, under future mitigation, we are informed that the development of a cyber incident response plan. Could you give some indication as to when this will be progressed?
I will ask the Chief Executive to continue from his original statement, John, for you. Chief Executive, could you repeat your original statement? Thank you.
Through you, Convener, given the current investigation, Councillor Crowther, it would be inappropriate for me to answer that question. If you really push me, I'll take the question in private.
Okay, that's fine, that's lovely. Everything can actually be done in private then, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, John, for being so reasonable about that. Any other questions, colleagues? No, we're asked at 2.1 to consider providing feedback on the notes and the position of the most significant corporate risk facing the Council and the key actions being taken in the Council. We also to note that the corporate risk register will be reported to the February 26th meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. We're happy with that? Thank you. Agenda item number 5, review of financial regulations. David.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of this report is to present the proposed changes to the Council's financial regulations. The regulations are reviewed on a 4-yearly basis, and the proposed changes are presented for review by committee prior to their approval by full Council. Paragraph 4.3 of the report and Appendix 1 to the report indicate the main changes to the regulations, which are primarily in relation to aligning the regulations with the structural changes within the Council, proportional increases to the thresholds for budget variance reporting and environment authorisation, and updates to reflect the revised approach adopted by Council to the governance of external organisations. Appendix 2 provides a clean copy of the revised regulations, while Appendix 3 details the various changes throughout the document. The committee is requested to review the proposed changes and provide any observations for inclusion in the report to the next meeting of Council on 19th of February. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Colleagues. Councillor Clougherty.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Dave, just one question if I'm looking at it right. See on the 4.3 when you're talking about the main recommendations, and it says to environment threshold to increase from 20,000 to 50,000. Just on the face of it, it seems big increase for environment, and I assume that's environment that get reported to committees. Can I ask you, what's the reasoning or the thinking behind that?
Thank you, Councillor. The thresholds in relation to the financial regulations for both budget environment and for budget variance reporting have not been.
You're breaking up a bit.
Sorry.
Yeah, while we're waiting, indeed, perhaps Matt could assist.
Sorry?
While we're waiting, indeed, perhaps Matt could assist.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I confirm that the increase in payment is the increase that's allowable within a service, and is approved by the Chief Financial Officer, so that wouldn't necessarily come to committee for approval. Above that limit comes for approval. The limits are, the 20,000 limit has been in place for a good number of years now. David's obviously come in, we've had a discussion with the finance to increase that, and we've decided that's an appropriate level within there. I can't take exactly what David's thoughts on his prior work, but we feel it's not moved for a good number of years, there is an increase there. It will still be reported, because obviously in one report you'll see that. We need to approve for it from the committee for that, but it's approved by the Chief Financial Officer.
No, that's actually fine. I think I was just getting probably a wee bit mixed up on whether or not it was still going to get reported to committee. No, that's fine.
David, can you hear us?
Sorry, Chair, I can hear you, but I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can now.
Oh, right. Sorry, having some very strange IT difficulties at this end. Just to elaborate on Matt's response there, the thresholds themselves have not been reviewed in 8 years, so this is a bit proportional increase, so that the thresholds that are being used in the financial management across the council are in an appropriate proportion to the budgets being managed, and that we don't overload committee reporting with too much minutiae or granularity.
Councillor Clockey, you have
Yes.
the two replies you got.
I'm delighted, Chair.
In your absence,
Thanks,
David,
David.
Max stood in and gave us a reply as well.
I'll do two things. Thanks to David and to Mark.
They both were the same, which is really most encouraging. Any other questions, colleagues? There was one I wanted to, given I was going through my various communications with Mr. Malone over the last few years. If I look at big page 123, which talks about hospitality, and I just want to draw a wee comparison here, colleagues, between the hospitality that's enjoyed by officers and the hospitality that's enjoyed by our good selves. Some 6 years ago, there was a debate over what we could accept as a gift. And eventually, I argued long and hard, and it was just the fact that the value of a gift had to be more or less than £2. Now, for councillors who are asked to speak, who do after dinner speaking, or perhaps by a constituent who appreciates us and gives us something for it, I always felt that was a ridiculously low figure. If I do after dinner speaking, I begin the bottle of whiskey, I've got to hand it into the council. Officers have simply to say that they received it. I don't expect any comment or any questions. I just think there's an anomaly there for the future. And I'd like to see us at one stage go back to looking at the cost of gifts that councillors can receive. At one time it was 50 and then it went to 20, then down to more or less nothing. Thank you for tolerating my outburst, everybody, including you two, Executive. I shall write to you offline on that. Any more questions? No, thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 6, review of standing orders relating to contracts. Anne, thank you.
Through you, Chair, Vicky Pollock, who is online, is going to speak to this report.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, Convener. So this report is looking for any comments or observations from the Audit Committee in respect of the proposed updates to the Council's standing orders. The last review, like the financial regulations, was in 2022 and they're due to be reviewed every 4 years. This has been a light touch review, mainly to reflect current practice, structural changes, and the more substantive changes are highlighted in paragraph 4.3 of the report. The table at Appendix 1 sets out the summary of changes made, and Appendix 2 has a clean version of the updated contract standing orders. Like the financial regulations, the contract standing orders are due to go to full council on the 19th of February for final approval, and they'll take into account any comment made by the Audit Committee today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I personally have one question. I'd like to go to big page 148 and point 12.1, sustainability. Could you elaborate on what, in pure either financial or percentage terms, the definition of sustainability, or is it totally at the discretion of the officers concerned?
I think that's a question I would need to put back to procurement, but I think it is mostly at it would be regulated by the regulations and the relevant procurement acts in terms of the sustainability percentages, etc. And it would also depend on the contract procurement strategy as well, which is agreed before something goes out to tender.
I suppose you're not aware of a current procurement strategy, are you? You don't have it to hand, do you, Vicky?
I don't have one to hand, I'm afraid, Convener.
And my main concern is that we are placing procurements, and as much as possible we can give preferential treatment to interclide companies. I don't really see that in here. But can that interpretation be taken from this, do you think, Vicky?
Again, it's something I'd like to clarify with the procurement manager, but off the top of my head, I don't think it's something that we can particularly do in terms of the regulations and the legislation regarding procurement. But again, I can take it offline and speak to the procurement manager.
Thank you. And we'd like to put a weighting on bids if they are local bids. You're nodding your head.
Through you can be done shaking my head.
You're shaking your head.
In terms of the procurement legislation, that would be frowned upon, so no, we can't. But we do encourage local businesses to participate in bidding processes. We encourage capacity building within local businesses, and indeed we walk contracts in order local businesses who may not be tier 1 or 2, tier 2 contractors are able to participate in the bidding process.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with that, Chief Executive. Thank you, Vicky, for taking those questions. Do we have any other questions? No. Are we happy to note this report, colleagues? Well, listen, thank you very much.